Hello and welcome back to another episode of TACHES Teaches. I'm Tash and this is part 2 in a series on lazy music theory hacks. In yesterday's video we learned how to create major and minor triads, major and minor 7th and major and minor 9th chords, and the simple formulas you can use to remember them. If you haven't yet watched that video, then I would suggest you go back and watch it now. For all of you who are up to date, I want to now talk a little bit more about some other chord types and how to make them. We're going to be learning how to make 11th and 13th chords, as well as sustained 2 and sustained 4 chords. So without further ado, let's jump right in. Okay, let's start with 11ths. So we learnt yesterday how to add a 7th. We have a gap of 3, 2, 3. And in order to add a 9th, we leave 2 more, so 3, 2, 3, 2. In order to add an 11th on top of a major chord, we leave 2 more gaps on top of that, C major 11. Now if you've got particularly good hearing, you may notice that sounds a little bit horrible. So if I mute these notes for a second, sounds a bit better. But if I shift this 11th down an octave, look where it ends up going. Sounds a bit nicer. So we can now extrapolate that to mean the fact that with any major chord, let's try a D major chord now. In order to quickly add an 11th to that, all we need to do is add a note directly above the second note. D major 11. Let's try that one more time. Let's go for an F sharp major. In order to add the 11th, we add a note just above the second note, F sharp major 11. Okay, what about minor 11s? So in order to make a minor 7th, we take a 2, 3, 2 on top of that, A minor 7. And in order to add a 9th, we add 3 on top of that, 2, 3, 2, 3, A minor 9. In order to add an 11th to that, we add the same as we did for the major, which is 2 more on top. A minor 11. Sounds a little bit better, but once again, let's get rid of that 7th and the 9th and shift down this 11th. And notice where it's now gone. We can now extrapolate that to mean the fact that with any minor chord, let's try an E minor here. In order to add an 11th, we leave 1 gap above the second note, draw in a note, E minor 11. Let's try that with F sharp minor. In order to add the 11th, we add 1 gap above the second note and draw in a note, F sharp minor 11. Okay, 13ths. So here we have a C major 9. We learnt how to add the 11th, despite the fact that it sounds really quite awful. In order to add a 13th above that, we leave a gap of 3, 2, 3, 2, 2, and then 3. C major 13. Once again, you may notice that that sounds quite horrible. So let's get rid of then the 7th and the 9th again, and the 11th, and shift that 13th down an octave. And look where it's gone. C major add 13. We can now say the fact that in order to add a 13th to a major triad, we take the top note, leave 1 gap and draw a note above. So let's try that on D sharp major. D sharp major, D sharp major add 13. So all we do is add 1 gap above the top note and draw in a note. Let's try that one more time. We'll go for G major this time. G major, we leave 1 gap above. G major add 13. Okay, minor 13ths. So just the same way as we had a 2, 3, 2, 3, 2 for the minor 11, the 13th is exactly the same as the major. We add 1, 2, 3, A minor 13. Doesn't sound particularly good, so let's get rid of the 7th, the 9th and the 11th and shift down this top note. It's the same place as before. So in order to add a 13th to any minor chord, let's take an E minor this time. All we do is we leave a gap above the top note and draw it in. E minor add 13. Let's try that with an F sharp minor. In order to add the 13th, leave the gap above and draw in the D sharp. You may already know what a 7th, 9th, 11th and a 13th actually are, but for the sake of clarity, let me just visualize it for you. I have here a C major chord, which is based off of the notes on the C major scale. If I add back in all of the rest of the notes of the C major scale, you can see that we have a D, F, A, and a B that are unused. Knowing now that we can add a ninth by adding a note with a gap just above the root, we can see that the D, the ninth, is just the second note in the scale. Seeing as a scale is 7 notes, why don't we take 9 and remove 7 notes from it, and what do we get but 2? So all a ninth is the second note in a scale up an octave. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. The 11th minus 7 is 4, which means we have 1, 2, 3, 4. What about the 13th? The 13th is number 6, which means 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The 13th is just the 6th note in the scale. We now know a great deal about major and minor chords and their extensions, but there are other chords out there that are neither major nor minor. This C major is only a C major because of this E. If I put this down, this is now a C minor. If I take this E and I put this down to where we would add our ninth, but don't keep in that third note, we now have what's called a suspended 2 chord. If I put it up to where the 11th would be, but we also don't leave that third major or minor defining note, we now have what's called a suspended 4 chord. In order to make a suspended 2 chord, all we do is we draw in a note, we leave one gap, and then we leave 1, 2, 3, 4, 1 and 4, suspended 2. Let's try that somewhere else. Let's make an A sharp suspended 2. One gap, 1, 2, 3, 4, A sharp suspended 2. In order to make a suspended 4 chord, it's just the other way round. So if we take a G, we go 1, 2, 3, 4, draw a note, leave one gap, suspended 4 chord. Let's try that on A sharp. So we leave 1, 2, 3, 4, one gap, A sharp, suspended 4. So a suspended 2 is just a gap of 1 and 4, and a suspended 4 is a gap of 4 and 1. We can, of course, still add extra colour to these suspended chords, and while by default this is neither major nor minor, depending on the sevenths and the ninths that you add, you can infer a sense of minor or major with that. So with this C suspended 2 chord, if I add a seventh just below the C, we now have a C major 7 suspended 2, but if I put that B down like we would do if we had a seventh being added to a minor chord, we now have a C minor 7 suspended 2. Let's try that with an F sharp suspended 4. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1 there. If I add a note just below the F sharp, we now have a F sharp major 7 suspended 4. But if I move that down again, now we have a F sharp minor 7 suspended 4. It's important to note, however, though, once you start getting into this sort of chordal territory, there are quite a few names that you could give to the same chord. But I don't think it's really necessary to get too bogged down with that, as long as you're going into this with the intention of making beautiful music that touches your heart. So let's do a quick recap on the formulas for making 11ths and 13ths and suspended 2s and 4s. So if we take this C major chord, we now know 3, 2, 3, 2 gives us a C major 9. In order to add the 11th, we leave 1, 2 gaps, and the 13th is 1, 2, 3 on top. Major chord is 3, 2, 3, 2, 2, 3. Of course, we also now know the fact that if we wanted to add an 11th quickly to a triad, all we do is we add a note directly above the second note. C major, add 11. In order to add a 13th, all we do is we leave one gap above the top note, draw it in, C major, add 13. With a minor chord, we have our 2, 3, 2, 3, gives us our A minor 9, and we do exactly the same as with the major, which is 2 and 3, which gives us a rather neat 2, 3, 2, 3, 2, 3, is a minor 11 with a 13th chord. We also then know if we wanted with a minor chord to add the 11th, all we do is we leave a gap above the second note, draw it in, A minor, add 11, and the 13th is the same as the minor, where we leave a gap above the top, A minor, add 13. Suspended chords. If we want to make a suspended 2 chord, we leave one gap above the root, and then we leave 1, 2, 3, 4. A 1 and a 4 is a suspended 2 chord.
If we want to make a suspended 4 chord, we draw our note, leave 1, 2, 3, 4, 1 gap. A 4 and a 1 is a suspended 4 chord.
Well, that's all, folks, and while I am sad to say goodbye once again, I feel immensely joyful that this video may to some degree have helped you. Remember to like, comment, subscribe, and turn on notifications if you think I'm cool and handsome, because like all millennials, I need the constant reassurance of strangers online to maintain my self-worth. As always, happy Friday and happy creating!